Welcome to another exciting episode of the In Our Tribe podcast. With me, I have Jaime Lemus. He is the Director of Transportation and Climate Change Division for the Sacramento Metropolitan Air Quality Management District. On top of that, he's an awesome guy and a great leader in our community. Welcome to the show, Jaime.
No, gracias, Adrian.
Gracias.
Happy to be here.
Oh man, we've been wanting this one for a minute, so we're really glad.
I'm not gonna lie. Every time people say like, "Hey, we want you to share your story," or "Hey, we want to talk to you," a lot of imposter syndrome comes through, man. Because you know why? Because there's a lot of people that I admire, that I listen to, and I'm like, that's worthy of listening to. I'm gonna forward that to my staff, or I'm gonna forward that to other people in the community. And so when I think about that, I think about like, pues qué fregados, what kind of awesomeness am I gonna bring? You know what I mean? So the imposter syndrome kicks in, right? And then I gotta think back, like, okay, no, I got some years.
Yes, sir.
I got some wisdom. I got a little bit of, I can throw down a few things.
Watch this, man. So, in a second, I want to go back to your youth in Salinas, California, right? I want to go back there, but first, what do you listen to these days? And you know that the other part of the dynamic duo was here earlier,
yes. Yep.
And she was talking about NPR, right?
Of course she was.
What are you listening to these days?
Híjole. So I always tell people, when I die one day, I said I want all the music that I listen to be played.
Nice.
And then people are gonna be like, pues qué fregado, I never knew, right? Because I'm a love ballad type of guy. I am. And people will be like, get out, like, ¿a poco you're listening to this and to that? So right now on the way over here, I listen to Leon Larregui.
Okay.
Brillas and Locos. And but I listen to, like, the other go-to's, Carla Morrison.
Look at that.
Yeah,
okay.
like love ballads. The same with movies, love ballads and like hopeless romantic stuff. I don't even know where that came from, pero that's what it was.
When did this happen? Like, when did you recognize this was your jam here?
I think sabes, probably desde chiquito, right? Like as you wake up in the morning, my mom is listening to like Los Freddys and Los Bukis cleaning.
Yeah.
And so it's all this like, música de amor and, she left me and ando bien agüitado and like all these esperanzas of love.
Yeah.
And I think se me pegó, man. Se me pegó.
I love it.
That's what I
love
listened to. And I remember like in the school dances, right? Like listening to all this, Bell Biv DeVoe y todo esto. And I'm like, why can't they play some slow jams so that I could like, just be in my feelings? So así fue.
A hopeless romantic.
Yeah.
I love it, man. Oh, it's so good. That's so good. So I know a little bit about your story, and I was so captivated by your youth in Salinas, knowing that you grew up in Salinas at a time that was, it was dangerous.
Yeah.
Let's be straight up about that, right? Can you tell us a little bit about your youth in Salinas and try to give the audience a little bit of a picture of what was taking place for young Latinos, Chicanos in that area during the time?
Yeah, so Salinas, is like in the middle of California, right? Entonces, adjacent to Salinas, you have what's now called, I think it's like Salinas Correctional. So you have a prison nearby. But, Salinas was really just embraced by gang lifestyle. Since it's in the middle of California, you had norte on sur, you had norte on norte, you had sur on sur, you had Salinas against Castroville, Salinas against Watsonville, Salinas against Soledad.
Oh my God.
And then you had Hebron Heights against La Posada against, Fremont, street on street. And it was like, it was really rough, I try to tell people que during that time, you had to belong somewhere. And as a little Mexicano kid, you went to where the people were who looked like you and ate like you and talked like you. And so that was Los Sureños from La Posada, That's where they were from. They were the first generation. All of the the parents, they worked in the files like my parents did. They picked lettuce or strawberries or worked in the carnations. Entonces, well, those are all things of common, ¿verdad? Entonces, that's who I gravitated to, right? And so that's how I started kicking it with those guys, right? Notorious, Salinas became this notorious city of violence that it became known as the place to grow hitmen. Okay, not to grow gang members, but to grow hitmen. It was at a time where, where youngsters got a hold of guns, and if you didn't have a gun, then you had a Molotov cocktail, So every day, every week, it's like whose house, who's up, who's next. I try to share with people. We, growing up in high school, we had a championship soccer team. The North Salinas High School. We were like campeones del fútbol, right? And as we progressed, freshman, sophomore, junior year, the members of that team were murdered. They didn't die of illnesses or accidents.
Yeah.
I mean, straight up murder because of the gang warfare.
Yeah.
Canijo.
Yeah, that was that. I remember this well because, like, they used to say, "Hey, careful if you're going to Salinas. Careful if you're dating a girl from Salinas," right?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, I remember telling, Christina, hey, I want to take you back to Salinas one day, but I got to be a little careful, because I got caught up in some stuff, and people don't forget, right? I mean, there's still some of the old schoolers that are still, I mean, they're solid old schoolers. And they're still kicking it.
They're active.
Yeah, and I moved away, pero I remember the time, and I was driving her through Acosta Plaza, which is a neighborhood that we grew up in, and it's one of those one way in and then one way out, all a bunch of apartment complexes, ¿verdad? And I told her, I said, watch, by the time we get to the stop sign, somebody's gonna be waiting for us. And she's like, oh my God, you're exaggerating, And then sure enough, by the time we got to the stop sign, ya habían echado el chiflazo.
Yep.
So someone's there, and they were like, hey, what's happening, homeboy? And I was like, hey, I'm just driving through. I grew up in this neighborhood. I'm showing my girlfriend right here kind of where I grew up from. And he's like, all right, OG, cool. Y ya, los fuimos, But I was like, ya ves? That's what it's about, It's the neighborhoods protecting the neighborhoods. It's the communities protecting each other, just because there's so much animosity. There's so much, lack of education. The resources are so limited, and when people talk about gang violence and gangs in general, I try to share with them, like, look, you have to really understand the entire picture.
Yes.
The entire picture.
Thank you for saying that.
Of poverty, of community, of protection, of all of those things, and how does that community thrive on its own, because it can't depend on nobody else, and so with that comes some of those beautiful things of community and families and love and protection, and come some other things that are not so great también.
That's right. And this is the time where musically in California you have like NWA and Ice-T, and I mean, they're just like, it was just like fuel to the fire. You know what I mean?
The movies, right? American Meat came out.
That's right.
Blood In, Blood Out. And I remember going to go see American Me in the theater, and it was this big discussion, I remember, with city council about, like, do we allow that type of movie in a town where it's already gang infested, ¿verdad? And then so they did, and then of course, right, you go, you dress up, you're like, woo, right? You're like, this is an event, right? And sureños on one side, norteños on one side.
In the same theater?
In the same theater.
Oh, smacks.
And nothing broke off. Everybody saw the movie. Everybody, I remember distinctly.
That's wild to me. Whoa.
I remember distinctly, I think there was this sense of tension, right? Because you had, Norte and Sur together, different streets, communities together. But but in the end, it's always a tragedy at the end, right? No one wins, right, in those type of movies. And I remember in the end, everybody came out triste, sad, like that's what we look forward to. like nothing positive, you
Yeah.
know. Everybody, I remember getting in the car with my homeboys at the time, and it was like silence, just cruising through silence. Yeah, it was, you know, retrospectively, as I think about it right now, I'm like, híjole, like we were kind of, y esto todo pa' qué, right?
Right.
Yeah.
At that age, how did you deal with loss? How did you deal with, kids getting shot, and if they didn't die, they got hurt? Like,
Yeah.
how'd you deal with all that?
It was rough. It was rough. My dad came with me all the time to the funerals. Like we would go to the funerals, um, and it was a lot of funerals, and it was very tense, and it was always like, what are we gonna do, right? What are we
Yeah,
gonna
man.
do about this, verdad?
Yep.
And it was always like, luckily, so I was the best friend of one of the shot callers from La Posada, and so I was always able to be like, is this really what we want right now? Like, we just buried so and so, and they're like, we're really gonna try and do this right now? Jaime, bro, like da 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 da, like weakness, y esto y lo otro, and I'm like, well, what about seeing la jefita, la hermana, right? And so I think that is what we related to, ¿verdad? Because, it's all about our jefitas, right? It's all about our moms. And so when we talked about that, it was like, all right, let's, let's just go drink our sorrows, ¿verdad? Or whatever,
Yeah,
right? So,
yeah.
But
Oldie?
it was rough. Yeah, it was oldie. That's right. That's right.
Yes, sir. So, where does this moment happen? Who's the angel? Who's the mentors in your life that start calling out the other side of Jaimito?
Yeah. So mira, Adrian, I was like, lucky for me, I was really smart in math and science.
That's wild, man.
Yeah, I was, like a lot of us, I was an ESL kid. It took me forever to read, didn't know big words, but math and science, like it just naturally just came to me.
I'm jealous hearing
So,
that.
yeah, I was always just naturally
Yeah.
really good at it. I didn't have to study or nada. And my English teacher at the time, se llama Ann Fairbrother. And I still keep in contact with Ann.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, and I always tell her, I said, Ann, you lured us all in with your lowrider magazines, and with your East Side Stories, playing them. She would have her classroom open and available during lunchtime, right? And entonces she'd play, the oldies. She'd have lowrider art, lowrider magazines, and she'd be like, this is a place where you guys can do your homework and kick it, And
Wow.
so we would, the homeboys would come in there and be like, orale, the newest edition, or she just had all the rolas, right? And this was this white woman, Ann Fairbrother, who was English. She's actually from England, blue eyes, long hair and everything. And
Wild. Wow.
And then it was her moment to be like, hey, have you guys ever been to like a Chicano conference? Do you know what Chicanismo is? Do you know what the Chicano movement is?
A white woman taught you this.
Yes. And she was, a little hippie también, right? And so then little by little, she pecked at it, right? So she got a group of us, a group of homeboys, and she took us to Fresno to a Mecha conference.
Wild.
Okay. And so we didn't have Mecha in high school or anything at the time. And so we were like, okay, but what are we going to go see? And she's like, you're going to go see a bunch of Chicano communities. There's probably going to be lowriders. And there's going to be people who grew up from the community that are doing great things now. So we're like, hey, let's go take a field trip to Fresno. Órale, cool,
Wow.
So so we did. We went to Fresno University, and we went to a Mecha conference. And that's when I saw one of my maestros now at the time. His name is Roberto Castro. And Roberto Castro was a maestro of a dance group called Iscali at the time. And no, man, he came on the stage like this, presented, Aztec danza.
Wow.
And I was like just blown away, like that is firme. And then he talked about who he was. He's an old bank robber from San Jose, East San Jose, got caught up doing bank robberies, and
Shit.
did time.
Really?
You know, yeah, did time incarcerated, and and in the prison system, connected with other Chicanos and native Chicanos, right? And then got out and was like, you can do better, right? Got connected with danza Azteca, and then all of a sudden he just flourished, right? So he became this community leader in the San Jose, Gilroy, Watsonville area that turned his life around and was giving, you know, homies like a second chance, right?
Wow.
And so he understood me, right? He was like, hey, little carnalito, like what's up, you know? Like, where are you from? And I was like, flexing, right? Like, what do you mean where I'm from, you know? And he's like, órale, cool. Like, and he never judged me for it. He never said like, nah, chales, we don't do that here. He was always like, all right, respect. It's about respect. And he really won me over like that, right? He introduced me to this other man, an elder in the community named Henry Dominguez, old school Aimster, so American Indian Movement, Chicano activist too, and then he started talking to me about DQ University, right, which is 7 miles west of Davis, right here, right, and he was like, hey, little carnalito, like, I don't know if you know, but there's a Chicano Native University that was created to decolonize your mind, that was created to embrace Chicanismo.
Powerful.
You know, and I was like, I was just like, tell me more, tell me more, tell me more.
Right.
You know, and then I just stayed connected with them, you know, and so this was like in 1990, 1991, and then that's when I started danza, you know, because of that. I was like, okay, well, let's see what this is about, you know. Let's start getting into who I am and who you know, reconnected into our indigenous culture. And so in 1990, 1991, we started with a man named Clemente Luis, and he's from Oaxaca, he's Zapotec, and he had been dancing for a lot of years, and he was like, hey, I need some help. We're gonna start this Aztec dance group, and you're pretty like, wanna learn, pues vamos. And so, you know, my dad was in, my sister was in, and a few other members of
So
the
this is still in
community.
Salinas?
This is still in Salinas.
Okay,
yeah.
gotcha.
So it has evolved over time, but there's still, now I believe there's two or three different groups now there. And then that just began this new journey of finding my indigeneity, embracing it, and really just, you know, really it saved my life, because in that time, I mean, stuff got even worse and worse with the gangs. I had no plan to go to college, because who was talking to me about going to college, right?
Right.
So I had nobody telling me like, hey, so what universities are you applying to? But we had Ann, you know, Ann Fairbrother, who was saying like, so what are you gonna do? What do you mean, what are we gonna do? We're gonna kick it. No, Jaime, you're much smarter than that, right? So when she connected me to Robert Castro and Henry Dominguez, and then Henry talked about DQ, well, that was the path. Then I take off to DQ in 1995, and I find out that it's a little ranchito. It's like between Davis and Winters.
Okay.
So no hay nada. Road
Wow.
31, rural country area.
Yes.
But I thrived there, you know. I thrived there, and that eventually led. I won a NASA scholarship for math and science.
Beautiful.
And it opened the door for UC Davis, and then so I ended up at Davis, and then graduated from Davis in 2000.
Yeah. It really captures my attention that you said I thrived there. So when you think about DQ, this little rancho in between Winters and Davis, what were the conditions of DQ that made you thrive or allowed you to thrive?
You know, it's funny. Someone just asked me that the other day about DQ, and you know, DQ has struggled for a lot of years. It lost its accreditation. It was like a junior college. So you got your AA out of there, but it lost its accreditation. And so people have asked me, what should happen with this, you know? And if you talk to a lot of the alumni from DQ, it cuts both ways. We thrive there because it's a lot of our own people's other Chicanos from the Mission District, from East Los,
Wow.
all with different, similar backgrounds, you know?
Yeah.
Old school homeboys looking for their indigeneity. And then the other half are Native American community members from reservations who are suffering from alcoholism and addiction,
Wow.
poverty. And then you put us all together.
Yeah.
Imagine el desmadre. Like,
Mm.
we all know loss, we all know alcoholism, we all know addiction, we all know bad behavior, chaos. And then you have these professors who are like, now as I remember, as I know them now, are like people in history books, Lehman Brightman, you know, Zenon Valadez, who are like, who are saying to us, there's a better way. Look, don't self-destruct, but embrace this education, because we are teaching you education at a higher academic level from our perspective so that you can thrive. And so, so some of us embrace that, you know, and it's like we embraced it, and it just really empowered us, I think, knowing that there were professors with long hair, that there were professors who were just as moreno as me, and they had very similar stories too about poverty and immigration and hardship, ¿verdad?
Yep.
But they were doing it. And so then it was like, órale, there's hope. Like, I can do that. Like, that's firme, you know?
So tell me, I'm making up a story in my head.
Sure.
I am. And you got to tell me, like, Adrian, you're way off now. Okay, so you go to Davis right after DQ.
Yeah.
And I'm imagining young Jaime, you know, Dickies pressed, Cortez's straight up, repping, walking Davis.
Yeah.
Is this true? Is this what I'm picturing
No.
in my head?
1995, I moved out of Salinas, right?
Uh-huh.
Still straight up white shirts, pressed, Ben Davis, Dickies, pressed. You know, we
Yeah.
never wore Cortezes though.
Oh.
We always wear those shiny shoes, you know, the shiny black shoes. You
The
know?
patent leathers?
The kind of like the patent leather.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
But they were really like mechanics shoes, like that you bought at Sears.
Okay.
Because they were a little more heavy duty. You know what I mean? So.
Gotcha.
So you didn't want Converse, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I don't think I've shared the story in a long time. And I'm gonna share it. You
Yeah,
know,
man.
See how it goes. Pero so in 1995, I come up. You know, I leave all my stuff, all my cosas at DQ University, and I take a drive into Davis. And and I'm looking like what Davis looks like, right? People on their bikes. You got Asian, you got white, you got Middle Eastern. I didn't know what all them people were. I thought they were Filipinos and Chinese because I grew up in Salinas, right? So you didn't have a lot of different different backgrounds and cultures. And so I'm in like La La Land, right? I'm in like, man, I bet people don't even lock their cars here. People are walking in the community. Like there's no dipping and diving, you know, like you could just, it's safe. And then around the corner, this young man turns the corner, and he's also wearing Benz, and he's got, you know, a white shirt, but it's different. His isn't like mine. Ours were like very clean, tucked in, prepped, you know, ironed. He was more like real baggy white shirt, you know. It's a different barrio, right? And he saw me and I saw him, right? And so of course, right, what do you do, right? You're like, you know, sass, right? Two roosters.
Yeah.
And he flashed some signs at me. And and we got down, Adrian.
No.
We got down right there on the street. Bam.
Oh,
and
that's wild.
and you know what it was? It wasn't that we were rival gang members. It was that I was in this dream world. I was out. I was out of the barrio. I was out of you know, harm. And I was in my head about like, wow, look at this. It's like, this is safe and this and that. And he like crushed it. He like crushed that for me. And I got so mad. And so no words, no signs back,
Boom.
just vamos, boom. And you know, many years later, I see that young man again, and it was like one of those flashbacks, like, oh man, like we saw each other, you know, like hey, like you look familiar, and I remember, and we just kind of like, you know, like ¿Qué ondas? What's up? And then we went our way, you know.
Dude, that's something.
Yeah, you know,
Like,
I don't think I've ever said that out loud in front of a lot of people, you know, but I remember maybe it was this shedding of this old Jaime, you know,
yeah.
and here emerging in this new place, and he was like, Chales, you haven't emerged yet. And it just tore me apart, you know. It just really tore what I felt was this dream. And he was just like, nah, man, like, come to reality, bro.
Yeah.
Like, this is still not what you think.
And he was a student there too?
He was, I don't think he was a student at Davis. No,
Okay,
I think he
gotcha.
was just a homeboy from, you know, later I find out, you know, okay, Davis has all these little labor camps. So I think he was from Yolano, you know. And,
Got it.
And then, of course, migrant farm worker family, you know, growing up in poverty. Lo mismo, lo mismo, you know what I mean? But, you know, but he flashed at me, you know.
And that was that.
And that was that.
I'm curious, right? So you're at Davis, and you have this gift that so many of us wish we had. You just naturally get science, you naturally get math, you excel, right?
Yeah.
And what was that like for you to be that guy who was thriving in a place that, real talk, perhaps wasn't meant for you
Yeah.
or for us, right?
Yeah, you know, I was really fortunate. My mentor was Dr. Daniel Chang, who happened to be the dean of the Civil Environmental Engineering Department. So he didn't see Jaime, old school homeboy. He just saw this youngster is good at math and science, and I'm going to put this to work. So he
Love
offered me
that.
opportunities, right? Our conversation, I remember, you know, when I told him about this NASA scholarship, and then I told him about having to do research as a part of the requirement, he's like, well, what kind of research you want to do, Jaime? And I said, I don't know, like you tell me. You're the doctor here, you're the scientist here, right? Like I don't know, that's why I'm coming to you. And he was really cool. He was like, well, tell me about yourself. Where are you from? You know, and who are your peoples, Jaime, and this and that. And so I said, you know, my family are campesino workers. They worked in picking the produce, you know, strawberries or pickers. And he said, what do you think about doing research in pesticides? And so I was like, okay. I said, let me tell you a story about what I know about pesticides. I said, I remember I was little. I was like maybe 12 or 13, and I ended up in the ER, right, for something, right. I'm there with my parents, and then all of a sudden, as you're waiting in the waiting room for the ER, this whole van full of campesino workers come into the ER, right, and they bring them in, and they shuffle them all inside to the ER, and then they tell them, no, you got to go out. And so then they shuffle everybody back out. And so they had all of these campesinos, groupings of them, outside, kind of like in a contained area, ¿verdad? And what happened was that they were pickers, and they had been sprayed by a crop duster.
Ouch.
And so they were all there because they had symptoms, you know, irritable eyes, you know, and all that stuff, right? So they had taken them all in. And the reason that they couldn't be in there is because of cross-contamination, ¿verdad? So they had to wait outside. And so I was sharing that story with Dr. Chang, and he said, okay, what about doing research with pesticides and plume dispersion and the impact on communities? And so I was like,
boom.
I love it.
Yes.
I don't know what that means, but I love it.
Yeah.
Okay. So then, you know, you know, he coached me, he mentored me, he paired me up with graduate students on you know, how to read, you know, plume dispersion and how to do the analysis for you know, when when a crop duster comes into the community and sprays over the crops, well, with climate and the wind data and with other environmental patterns, those pesticides don't just land on the field, on those fields, they travel. You know, they go into the land, they go into the water, they go into the neighboring communities, into the labor camps. And so what kind of impact, you know?
Yep.
Well, now we know it's cancer clusters, right?
Yeah.
And so, so it was the beginning of that data and that research that he had me do. So,
You're so wild. It's just like right there on the spot. I don't know if you all caught this, right? But right there on the spot, like Jaime talking about like, this is who I was. And then the scientist emerges. It's like, boom, you're talking about like, now we know. And what is it about science and that connection to Salinas that just captures you so much, and that you're in it. Like, you know this stuff really well.
Yeah. When I did some of the research, I know that I wasn't the only one that had done that type of research before. I know that there has been lots and lots of data through other state organizations and environmental agencies and environmental organizations. But one of the things that was very impactful to me was, who is sharing this with our community? Like, my parents don't know this. Like,
right.
The people, my tios and my tias, picking strawberries and lettuce, they don't know this.
Right.
I mean, yeah, they know it's bad. You know, pesticides are bad, they're chemicals. But they don't know about the environmental impacts, the health impacts, the respiratory impacts. They don't know that maybe the respiratory issues that they're having are a result of this, of long-term exposure. Because even though we have standards and minimum safe levels, you're still getting exposed little by little, you're ingesting it little by little, you're being exposed. So what is that over time?
Gets you.
Know? Yeah, absolutely, ¿verdad? Entonces, those are those messages, the education of that, and then just trying to get other people in those sectors to be like, look, I'm just one. Can we get more in here? Because it's not just in Los Files, it's in automotive, it's in trucking, it's in canneries, it's in packing, it's in on and on and on and
all
on
that.
and on and on. And so we need people that understand the scientific research and the data, but then also that look like us. So that we could share this
1,000. Absolutely that. And I think that's why you're so good at what you do. Yeah. And by the way, if you're listening and you're hearing like drums in the back, we're in the middle of an amazing storm here right now, and it's coming down.
Coming hard.
It is coming down like crazy. It's kind of cool. But I do want to do a quick transparent check with our sound engineer. We left off at you talking about the importance of representation, the importance of people hearing from you that, hey, here's just how you take care of yourself so you don't end up with some life-threatening disease in years to come. How have you seen that firsthand? Like, what is the difference between Jaime saying it and someone else saying it?
I think it slices two ways, Adrian. One is one real experience that I have is like, wait, who are you? But you're dark and moreno and you don't speak great English, and you are an expert in this? Keep going, keep going. I need to validate, you know, I need to get more from you, ¿verdad?
Yeah.
And then the other half of it is, you know, it's only been until maybe a few years ago, you know, through our danza, through our, you know, I'm the director of you know, the danza group Calmeca, and I'm also a cultural keeper here in the Sacramento region, where I started sharing to our community, who has known me for years, that that I'm the director of transportation and climate change, that I'm a scientist.
Yeah.
And the response I get is like, we thought you were a teacher. You know, it's like, no, like I teach danza, but I'm not a like a academic educator, you know. And then once I've said it more and more and more, people were like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Are you like, oh my gosh, I'm studying environmental science, or I'm studying urban planning, or I'm studying climate. like, and this is what you do? Oh my gosh, you know, and then it's just been like someone has broken through these barriers,
Right,
and
right.
now it's easier for them, right?
Yeah.
And so it's been a little bit like that, right? The the professional angle on this side is this industry and this sector is very non-Moreno focused, right? So a lot of Asian, you know, scientists or a lot of European scientists, um, a lot of Anglo scientists, and so not a lot of Mexicanos, you know, Mexican, Latinos, or anything like that, right? And so, um, so you get dismissed, you know, you get dismissed a little bit in those tables, ¿verdad? And so, you know, what I've learned is, you know, I come to this table, my role brings me here. You know, a lot of times my title is what gets me to this table. And, you know, I'm always very good about listening, observing. And then I've been in this sector in my agency for 24 years.
Wow.
You know? Plus, I've done some time at the California Air Resources Board and research with Davis, right? So I've been in the sector for probably around 30 years now. So I know my stuff.
Yeah, you do.
And it's only been, I think, within the last few years where I'm like, no. I know this stuff. Let's not question this. I know, and I evaluate the data and the science, and that's how I make my expert opinions.
I love it.
Yeah.
Your expert opinions.
Yeah.
I love that because it's the truth, man. You are a black belt when it comes to this
Yeah.
stuff. Talk to me about navigating that other part. And what I mean by that other part, you're one of the few, if sometimes only, Latino in these spaces. And I'm going to talk to you like we're just off camera.
Bring it.
How do you do it without selling out?
Yeah.
You've heard that, I'm
Oh, yeah.
sure. That's why I'm
Oh, yeah,
asking it
yeah,
that
yeah,
way.
yeah. It has been, over the years, it has been a struggle. You know, one, I work for government right off the top. So you have to navigate this government bureaucracy that doesn't allow you to have the freedom of doing whatever you want. You have to navigate within parameters, ¿verdad? And like my cousins, like all my little young primitos, you know, who all bang still be like, "You the man, primo. You know, you represent the man still. And can you sign off on this, you know, on this, you know, this fix-it ticket?" I'm like, yeah, you know. But you know, really embracing, I think, the years of experience, the knowledge, my role, you know, has really just helped me. But that's on the professional, technical side of things, you know.
Yeah.
Like, there's also the other side of the cultural relevancy,
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
and the empowerment. A few years ago, I got to represent the Sacramento region, you know, at the United Nations Climate Action Summit, and it was in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt.
Wow.
And so I represent, you know,
How
our
cool is
region
that? Yeah.
in climate, ¿verdad? And I went like a suit, you know, because I'm a delegate representing not only the United States but the Sacramento region. You know, white shirt, you know, tie, todo, right? All of that. And so that gets you respect there, right? Because you got a tie and you got a suit and everything like that. And as I'm walking through the convention, I hear this homeboy of mine, this voice. "Get out." "What? Jaime?" And so I'm like, and it's a homeboy of mine named George Galvis from Oakland. And he's the executive director of this organization called Courage. They work rehabilitating formerly incarcerated people. He's there. They're teaching youth and grassroots level organizing about environment and climate, right? So he's there with all of these native youth, native professionals, Chicano folk, I mean, all kinds. And I'm like, "George, what is up?
Yeah.
Abrazo, this and that. Come, I want to introduce you to my peoples, Jaime." And I'm like, "Yeah, let's go." And so I'm like, I found familia in Sharm el-Sheikh, right? You know, it's like way on the other side of the world. And so I go and I meet with these folks, and he's introducing me, and they're just like, "Yeah, what's up, bro?" Yeah, what's up? Yeah.
Mm.
Well, I got this little pin, you know, that's local government, you know, I'm in a suit, and they're like, you know, trenzas, they got, you know, some of their, you know, like pretty cool, you know, community justice, you know, shirts and branding and everything, you know, and I'm one of them, but I'm not one of them.
That. Yep.
Oh my gosh, Adrian. You know, it just started eating me, because here I am as a delegate representing a government agency, our Sacramento region, in this United Nations summit in my professional capacity, but I almost feel like I'm not being my true authentic self.
Yeah. Yeah.
And all of these folks, they saw it. And I saw that they saw it.
Yep.
And they didn't embrace me, and híjole, it was like, yeah, cool, whatever, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So then I remember I came home, and I cried. I cried because I was like, híjole, like all of this time and effort to represent and fit into government, to be empowered, and then for my community not to accept me, sell out, right? Vendido. And I'm like, oh, that's not who I am. That's not what I've been. My community here in Sacramento, they know that.
Mm-hmm.
But in this first, you
Yeah.
know, introduction, they don't know that, right?
Right,
They don't
right,
know.
right.
I mean, they know I'm solid because George Galvis introduced me,
Yeah.
and he's solid, and he introduced me as his brother.
Yeah.
But that's all. That's as far as it goes, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the next year, you know, I had the privilege to go again, and so I said, Chales, this time I'm going like my true authentic self.
Mm.
You know, I'm wearing my indigenous, you know, jewelry, right? I'm wearing
Mm-hmm.
indigenous colors. You know, maybe I'm braiding my hair this time. I'm doing a little more to not feel so government stuffy.
Got it.
Right.
Got it. Yeah.
And I think, you know, I share that with you, Adrian, because that's a really big fight internally that we have when we take these roles on. You know, I have to travel to DC. I know that when I go to DC, I can't wear this. I got to wear a white shirt. I got to wear gray or blue. I got to wear, you know, a boring tie. But that's because that's what it takes to do business in that moment, in that place.
Right.
Back home, that's not what it's like, right? Right here, I'm in my community.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of weeks ago, we were with La Familia, right? Our
Yeah.
agency granted them like almost a little over like $1.7 million to do a new
That's what's
parklet.
up. Nice.
And I went with my botas, and I went, you know, like representing like our community does, right?
Yeah.
And so it has been a struggle. And I think the most important thing about me saying that is that I think we have to give ourselves grace and not be too hard on ourselves for needing to have to fit into this role and that role, but just being able to be okay with who we are.
Truth, man.
Yeah.
Truth. Yeah. It's like you're saying these things, and I resonate with so much of what you're saying, and for me it's been another story where like I've been having to prove my Latinidad, my identity to people. I'm like, hey, my dad picked grapes and asparagus in Delano too, like you know, but it's this weird tension that happens, and then you finally get to this point where like you just have to be you and let you do what it does, right? And but it is at times, like you said, you went to your room and you cried. There's that like everyone wants to belong, right? Especially when you feel like you belong. And you're at this point in time right now where your belonging's different now, man. Like you got the black belt, you got the keys, to the ride, you know. But you're a mentor in our community now. You are a leader, man. Like when you speak to us, we listen. Like you say, we're going that way, we're going that way. Like, what does that mean to you to have that gift and that responsibility to know that your life, from Salinas all the way to Sacramento, you're now, dare I say, an elder? I mean that in a good way,
an
right?
Older,
like,
an older. I don't know if you've heard the term yelder.
A yelder?
You know, a young elder, a yelder.
You're a yelder. You're a yelder. And when you think about that, man, do you ever trip that like people are calling you for advice?
Yeah. You know, we are at an age where our elders are passing on, ¿verdad? And so then when I look around, like, oh man, I
Yep.
mean, we just celebrated 53 years at one of our danza communities, celebrating our children and our youth through the springtime and the changes of the seasoning and transformation, right? And it was this past Saturday, and there was only 4 elders there.
Wow.
And then there was me and my compadre and other people who were my age, and it is a little bit sometimes almost a little bit confusing when they're like, "Hey, uncle," or "Hey, I want to ask you for this," and you're like, "Órale," But sometimes I have to listen to my own advice that I give to like my compadre and to some of these other yelders, ¿verdad? Is our journey that we've had, like even what I went through in Salinas, being a hardcore gang member and all of these things. It was a journey of life that had a lot of experiences,
Yeah.
good and bad. I learned a lot. I mean, people say, you learn from making mistakes. Pues híjole, right? I made a lot of them, ¿verdad?
Yeah.
But I've taken all those years, those very rough, hard years of gang life, my years of being in high school and being really, really smart in math and science, my young Aztec dance years, and then on and on and on, all the way to Davis, to where I am at now, and all of that journey has really created opportunities for me, really, to know about lessons, to know about making mistakes.
Yeah.
One of my biggest mentors, my tío Chuy Ortiz, ya descansa en paz. One of the things about that man was that he never judged anybody. Never judged anybody.
Yeah.
Open doors, he would always say. Open doors with anybody. And he would spend the time to talk to anybody, And sometimes I would sit there and he would be talking to a mentally ill, unhoused person, and he would just sit there and just chat with them, And then other times he'd be talking to the mayor, and other times he'd be talking to all these people, and I was always like,
Yep.
man, like this man really doesn't, like, there's no bias and there's no judgment. And he really, like, I think always would tell me that. He'd be like, he called me Coyote, right? He'd be like, little Coyote. He's like, we always got to listen to people. They always got a story, and somewhere along the line, he's like, they might be asking you for something. He says, so you got to pay attention. He says, and then somewhere in that past of yours, maybe there's something that you could share with them. He says, or maybe not. Or maybe you just stay quiet and you just listen. He says that maybe you learn from it.
Wow.
And so I was always like, órale, cool.
So wonderful advice right there.
Yeah.
Oh. And that's how I know you're an amazing leader, bro. I'm not trying to throw shade on anyone, but sometimes you get people out there and talk about their leadership journey, and you swear they never made a mistake in their life. Like, oh my God, they did this and they did that, and they invented the internet. And it's like, what I love about your leadership is that, one, you're incredibly transparent, and you're so open with the gifts you've learned from the mistakes.
Yeah.
And I think that's just so valuable and so important. It's what makes you authentic and makes people want to listen to you more.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I didn't feel that way about it. There's an author called Luis Rodriguez, right? So I'm not a reader, okay? I'm not a reader. I'm slow. I prefer picture books. And I think it goes back to this whole ESL thing, right? Pero he has a couple of books. One is Always Running, and the other one is It Calls You Back. And I went through a moment, in my life where, as I was growing in my community, as someone who is a cultural keeper and respected, I was really struggling with who I was. Some of the bad decisions I had made. And so my homeboy, George Galvez, I was talking to him about it, and he said, you need to read this book by Luis Rodriguez, this cool homeboy. He says, he's got similar stories like us. And I said, all right, cool, but I don't like reading. So like, is there a movie or like, And so, but I read it and it was like I was reading stuff about my life, right?
Right.
Old homeboy, bad decisions. And then at the end of one of the books, he's out, but he ain't out, because he still got family, right? You still got family, you still got homeboys and everything, right? But it created some acceptance of like, man, okay. So I didn't have to be out. I just didn't have to make dumb decisions, and do stupid things, right? So then, I read the next book, It Calls You Back, and he talks about that struggle, about the old homeboy. The homeboy that that did a favor for you years ago, and you still have some debts out there, and they call to collect, and then now you're like, I got a family, I got this, I got that, and but palabra is palabra, and so and he talks about all of that, right? And so and then he started talking about, in this book, he talks about post-traumatic stress disorders, hypervigilance, all of these things that I think are attributes, but my wife as a therapist says no, they're not attributes. These are symptoms, of growing up in that have symptoms that trauma has created, ¿verdad?
Yeah. That's what I've heard it called. I've heard it. Someone called it to me the other day. They said trauma intelligence.
Yeah. Oh, I like that, trauma intelligence.
Right?
Yeah,
But it's that, right? It's
yeah.
that, like.
Yeah. You come in, you always look at where the exits are, like, okay, let's be trucha, right? Trucha, right? And so then that gave me peace. That was like, órale. You're not a bad dude. You're not a bad vato. You made some bad decisions. You learn from it. You grow from it. You hopefully prevent others from making those. And now that you know all of that, what are you going to do with it, right? Because you can't just keep it and not share it, And so how are you going to share it out, right? Well, but I think out of the most important thing out of that whole thing was that it gave me peace to myself.
That's everything.
Yeah.
That's everything right there. Beyond beautiful, man. One day, I could see your book being written. I really can, man, because it's so inspirational. It really is. And I don't mean that in a cheesy, hallmarky way, man. I mean that like, look, I grew up in a part of San Francisco that was hard, man, during a similar time that you were in. And, my brother's good friend gets stabbed 17 times at Mission Dolores and passes away right there on the spot when the school was in third period right across the street, like the stuff happened again and again and again. And it was really hard to like not let that shit mess with you,
Yeah.
And the reality is the older I get, the more I know that there's no escaping. It does mess with you.
Yeah.
But there's ways of healing.
Yeah.
There's ways of healing and moving forward. And I think it's so cool to be with someone who's a yelder, who is healing while helping the community heal as well. And I just need to thank you for that, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah, well, I can't say, like we have so much stuff, right? Even as we grow and we become like responsible, what do they call it, with financial literacy, all those things, it's constant learning and constant healing, So, for those that say like, oh yeah, I got to figure it out. All right, cool, whatever, good for you, porque, I feel like I still got a long ways, but now at least I'm more at peace with it and I'm enjoying it.
That right there. Yeah. Well, let's end on that, man. Let's end like when you think about Jaime right now, the yelder. What are you most grateful for right now? Like two, three things that you just find yourself being filled with gratitude for.
One is I'm grateful for my sobriety. That one I had a really hard time with for many years, coping. right? Coping through lots of death and hardship, ¿verdad? My dad was an addict for many, many years. A lot of my cousins are addicts, and so my sobriety, I have like, I don't know, over 15 years sober now, and
Congrats.
thank you. And I have found extreme clarity.
Wow.
So I'm grateful for that, and really the community who held me accountable and supported me, because I had some really, really good friends, like this one homeboy of mine named Marlon Kirby, who said, "Bro, what is going on with you? You are off the hook." And then all I did was like, "What do you know?" Sas, right? And but that vato held me accountable, and then others, también, my compadre, different folks, right? So I appreciate and always love my community, right? Because that's what it takes. It takes us to keep each other accountable, because when you're like, when you got a moco right there or whatever,
Right.
people be like, no. But when I'm saying, right, you hope that community is like, hey, así, right?
Yeah.
Or when they say, nah, man, te pasaste, but when they say, hey, man, that was firme, then you're like, solid, you know what I mean?
Solid.
And so, yeah, and then finally is health, bro. We are suffering from not going to the doctor, and we have people my age who are having heart attacks and high blood pressure and diabetes, and it's like, man, so I'm grateful that I have good health and everything, pero, my familia, man, I was telling you earlier, I'm a girl dad, 3 girls, and my wife, híjole, they keep me on my toes. so I'm grateful for that,
Brother, we are beyond grateful for you. Thank you for being part of this this amazing community and journey we call Sacramento, man, and creciente. You know what I'm saying?
I love it, man.
Thank you, brother. Boom. Thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in, watching to the In Our Tribe podcast. We're here in the middle of season 10. Do me a favor. If you're into this type of thing, if you're into hearing amazing stories of change makers and community activists and leaders, do us a favor, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and keep on coming back for more. Tell a friend. Peace out. I also want to thank the Ring Studios for providing this awesome space for us. It really is a joy to be right here on this spot and to have wonderful conversations with incredible change makers. We'll see you soon. Peace out.